Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla, let's go over the market, and let's figure out just what in the hell is happening with this stock and really just the market in general today. So yeah, all that being said and done, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button as it does help a lot. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, my membership section on YouTube is live with the link down below. When you get access to my intraday thoughts, posts, updates, etc. on Tesla pretty much throughout the day as it's, as the stock is trading, the market's moving and whatnot, options flow, etc. And yeah, today was a wild day. Traps left and right. And unfortunately, the bulls could not really come out victorious, even though we had a lot of bear traps coming out today, a lot of false breakdowns. But we'll discuss all that in the video. So let's just jump into it. Tesla closing the day, unfortunately, down almost 3% on the day, closing at 191.8 roughly, we'll say. Compared to the market, definitely, once again, an underperformance. SPY pretty much flat, QQ only down about, 0.5%, we'll say. So yeah, bit of an underperformance day for Tesla today, but let's talk about it. Let's discuss what does this really mean moving forward. So I'm not gonna lie, it's not looking amazing. There's still good news. There's still good news, right? And the good news, let's go over the good news before we get into the bad news first. The good news, regardless of what I'm gonna say after, is the fact that, well, honestly, overall, the overall structure for Tesla, at least in this specific little area, this congestion zone, if you will, that we're in, still looks okay. Honestly, it still doesn't look that bad. There's definitely some signs of concern, and as I'm sure you can see, right, some pretty obvious ones here. However, the RSI still looks pretty solid. The RSI still looks pretty healthy to me. It really does, right? We have the MACD still looking bullish. It could potentially, kind of cool off here as we potentially do what I think will happen next, which I'll talk about in the bearish aspect. But, the MACD still looks overall good. It might have time to cool off a little bit. Maybe, the green line comes back to the red line to kind of retest this sort of thing. You know what I mean? But overall, I still think the overall structure is not bad. Also, keep in mind, today's volume pretty low. We had pretty much close at the lows of the day, but the volume has been decreasing. Ever since this move up, which did have an increase in volume, which I like to see, we've been kind of going sideways, right? For the most part, a little bit of a bearish close today, which can imply a bit more bearish movement for next week. We'll talk about it again, like I said. But the important thing to note is the fact that pretty low volume today, right? The volume is pretty low on a pretty red candle looking, a pretty red candle looking day. So that's potentially a good sign for the bulls, right? So those are the overall main things I'm looking at right now that kind of signifies that overall Tesla, there's still potential. There's still absolute potential. And I still think overall it's looking pretty solid in the sense that the overall structure, for instance, right? If we open up the volume profile here, let me zoom out here. We're on the daily, right? Yeah, we're on the daily. Let me zoom out. It's on the right spot. Beautiful. So if I zoom out, all right, we can see the volume profile, right? We're still pretty much taking this increase in volume pretty much all the way down here, right around pretty much as we enter the 180s, to 185, right? That's where the bigger volume increase is. You can see here, we're still acting and treating this general area as a support. We're still above it and we're still coming back down into it. And again, acting as in theory, at least, support. So that's good, right? We're still looking at it and treating it as such, which is a nice thing to see, right? So that's in my opinion, still arguably bullish, right? That's still not a true, really horrific break of structure, right? So that's a good sign. So, which I do think will come in. I do think that there is a very real possibility we see the 180s next week. But again, we're essentially just going to be entering a high area, or at least relative to, everything else above and below it, a higher area of volume profile support around that area. So that's a good sign, right? That's not a bad sign. Also, when we were down in this area back in the low 180s, there was a lot of bad news that was constantly coming in, even down here. And Tesla kept bouncing pretty aggressively off of the low 180s to the high 170s. So there clearly is substantial support around that area and demand. So that's always a good sign to see. Now, let's go over the not so great news, right? The not so great news is, well, it's pretty simple, right? So let's go ahead and remove this volume profile. And I'll talk about a trade that I did enter after this. We're rejecting the 21 EMA, right? We did close ever so slightly above it yesterday, but I did mention how it wasn't a crazy close above it, right? It was, it was a close above it, but it wasn't super convincing. So clearly today that happens to be the case, right? We obviously didn't get a super duper convincing close, and we obviously got rejected by it today. The orange line here is the 30-day moving average. You can see it's been pretty much almost exactly rejecting us every single time we come up to anywhere even remotely close to it. It's been slapping us back down every single time and just not letting us cross this area. So the way I look at it is as follows. If Tesla can ever start closing candles ideally above both of these moving averages, essentially, that is when I think Tesla can start flipping bullish and at the very least come up to gap fill at this 207-ish gap. If not, potentially, like I said, even go up to the 220s or even 230s. But in my opinion, the trigger point that I'm personally waiting on right now is to see a daily candle closing above both of these indicators, both of these moving averages essentially. So that's going to be what I'll be looking for. Now, on top of that, on top of getting rejected by those two, we're also, of course, falling out of this channel. This is the channel we've been talking about for quite some time, right? On the daily, right? And we had some close calls. Like yesterday, for instance, we did go back below it and then we shot back up and it looked like a pretty decently looking candle yesterday. Unfortunately, we didn't get any follow through. And again, we pretty much did the exact same thing that we did yesterday. Just in this case, we actually closed at the bottom of the day instead of almost at the highs of the day. And now we also have pretty much fallen out of this channel. Now, there is still chances for this to get redeemed, right? Not one candle doesn't really make a trend, but it's not looking too hot. I think the best case scenario here is going to be, well, we come up to retest the trend line, which I don't even see happening right now. Personally, I don't think that'll happen. I think if anything, we'll go best case sideways, if not down to about 185-ish, which is what a trade I'll talk about soon. But I don't expect Tesla to crash. Like, I don't think we'll just crash from here. Personally, I could be wrong. I personally don't expect a crash, but I do expect essentially zigzag movement anywhere between like this low-ish 190s to about the mid 180s. That's personally what I expect right now. Just kind of a sideways movement for the most part for next week. And that's exactly what I am expecting. So that's kind of, the overall idea. But all in all, we did close below moving averages that we don't want to be closing below, that we got rejected by. We're closing below this trend line. We're falling out of the channel, which is not really good. We have a 65-minute little wedge here that we are obviously now breaking down below as well. So that's not good as well. So there's a lot of things that are not really going super well right now for the short term. But again, I don't expect Tesla to just literally crash from here. I personally would not be surprised though if we do come back to the 180s. And again, pretty much just dance around between like here, like for instance, come like here, then maybe go back up like this, then come down here. They kind of, just like really do a whole lot of nothing. Honestly, I really expect a whole lot of nothing next week for Tesla. I could be wrong. Maybe we just crash. I just don't think that's the case. But that's essentially what I expect moving forward until we find better signs that, maybe we're actually looking to break, to either break down even further, which essentially if we go back below 180, that would be pretty bearish. Obviously, that means that we probably go even lower, and then we could potentially start looking towards this little channel that we find ourselves in over here that we have retested several times, and that could potentially bring us back down to this channel one more time, which will be pretty much the low 170s to high 160s. That is not impossible. I just don't think that'll happen next week. I think that'll take a bit longer, potentially 2 weeks if that were to happen at all. Maybe 3, right? Again, I don't expect Tesla to just crash from here. I still think we have a lot of support below us that should act as a pretty solid support. But again, I'm pretty much expecting just sideways action and not really a whole lot for next week. So that's kind of the main thing I'm looking at. Now for options flow, it's pretty interesting. Let me go ahead and refresh it. It says I'm out of date for some reason. Let me go ahead and refresh this really quickly. Let me go back to Tesla over here. And let's go ahead and set the filters to, of course, as usual, $100,000 premium. One thing that's interesting is the fact that there is a pretty decent amount of call options that I have seen come in for next Friday, like a pretty substantial amount. Like for instance, all the way over here, you can see a lot of these are for, wait, where was it? I was just at it. So for instance, all the way up here, right, pretty much not long before the market closed, we had a bunch of, for 0301, which again is next Friday, a lot of call options, some put options here and there, but I'm seeing a pretty healthy amount of call options come in over here, down here as well, right? 140K for next Friday. 400,000, 120,000. Like there's a lot of surprising call options coming in for next Friday that are out of the money right now. So we'll see how that plays out. There's, we'll see if Tesla can actually, make its way to there or not, or these people are just going to be losing their money. Who knows for sure? But again, I am seeing some pretty respectable bullish flow for next Friday. Nothing completely out of the ordinary or crazy in terms of like 230 for next Friday or something like that. But, slightly out of the money, which is still interesting and not very little premium, like $400,000 for next Friday, 192 calls. That's a lot of money to just play on a weekly. I'm just saying. So we'll see how that plays out. But again, I'm not necessarily bearish here on Tesla, but I'm not necessarily bullish here on Tesla. I will turn bearish if we start closing daily candles below 180. That's, in my opinion, going to be bearish. I will be bullish if we start closing candles pretty much above 197. That'll be bullish. But until then, I do expect overall just really a whole lot of nothing in between those kind of rough two price ranges, honestly, until one of them finally gives. That's what I mainly expect right now, potentially for the next even few weeks. We'll see how it plays out, of course. Now, in terms of the trade that I entered, I actually did share this with my members, which is going to be this trade here. I'm entering a cash secured put, on Tesla for next week, Friday, right? March 1st, a 185 puts. I exited all my shares. So I did exit all my shares at 197. Oh, thankfully. And I will rebuy them either at, 185 plus the premium, or I'll just take the premium and re-enter if we get a break, like I said, above these two moving averages like I talked about. So that's kind of the main thing I'm doing. And the reason I enter 185 puts is because if I go here and I show you this interesting, by the way, if you don't use this, if you're ever like someone that really does options at all, I highly recommend you use this very interesting tool here. But essentially the market right now is roughly expecting about a 4% expected move for next week, essentially by Friday, right? 42% implied volatility, and it's expecting somewhere around 185. You can see here by March 1st, 184.5, right? That's why I sold 185 puts. It's a little safe, right? It's a little safe. It's not like the most risky thing in the world at all, but essentially I'll be buying back the shares that I sold earlier today, pretty much this morning, at like what, about $11 cheaper per share, which, you know, that's pretty solid. Like, I'm not complaining about that whatsoever, plus the premium. So the reason I'm doing this is mainly because, again, if Tesla comes back to those levels, I'm okay buying there, because I think we're right in the dead smack middle of some, in theory, some pretty strong support, right? If it just goes sideways and does nothing, well, I just keep that premium and it just slowly decays away, and perfect. I'll just keep it while Tesla is really just doing a whole lot of nothing. If Tesla does go up, and let's say we do rally, let's say we do start breaking above 197 in these moving averages, cool. I can buy the shares outright, the comments, of course. And I can also either just really straight up close that sold put for profit, of course, might be even like a solid 30% just even off of that alone, and then just ride the wave up, right? Because now I'm seeing a natural bullish flip, which is good to see. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. And that's sort of the way I'm playing this overall, you know, scenario right here, right now, right? So yeah, that's kind of my trade at the very moment that I have taken on Tesla. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of it down below. But again, not expecting a whole lot next week. I do expect some just sideways moving pretty much between those two overall ranges, 180 and as high as 197, though I think it'll be a little tighter than that. I really expect it to be somewhere between like 193-ish, 193, 194, to as low as like 183. It's like that's kind of that $10 price range is where I expect Tesla to just go zigzagging for pretty much the majority of next week, potentially even longer. But yeah, that's it for the video, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button. Thank you so much for watching. Again, don't forget you can join the channel, the member section on YouTube. The link is down below in the description for just $2.99 a month. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. And as usual, I'll see you for the next one on Monday. So until then, thanks for watching. Peace.